welcome on my first step ever. It is so interesting to meet people who have carved a life of their own. And today I'm so excited to be inviting someone who I can say has definitely taken his work seriously, but not himself. And I think that is an amazing mantra to live by. To all the youngsters, to all the adults who are listening to us today, I know you have a lot of doubts in your mind, which is all okay. And I want to tell you, do not take yourself too seriously, but your work for sure. Things can change in life in many ways, and so can your career. So, but why am I saying all these things to you? Because we have a guest speaker who has gone through somewhat a similar story, but very interesting. And let's dive in straight. Let me and join me welcoming Alexmorris all the way from Sydney, Australia. Hi, Alex.
Hello, Ashani. What a beautiful intro. That was so fun. Thank you so much.
That's definitely a vibe that I got, from you when I was like reading about you. I was looking up about you and your life, and it just gave me a hope and something very interesting to share with our listeners. So I'm extremely excited to have you. And before we move forward, I like our listeners to know a bit more about you. So Alex is a dad of two, which is he has twins. So congratulations. I think there must be a handful. And he's from Sydney, Australia. He's the founder of The Moon Digital, a digital marketing agency which is focusing on lead generation for coaches and consultants, which is very interesting because I think he's found his niche. And that's also a very good, understanding of how a person can build focus in his area, in his work area as well. So pretty much more than that, before he became the person that he is leading, he also runs a podcast which is also very interesting, and he talks everything about business, coaching, and marketing. But before this, he was a coach for good 10 years. And now he's helping coaches and consultants from different areas of life to generate to actually help them get more money and more clients, and in a very beautiful way. So let's start with my first question, Alex. Everything keeping aside, let's go to the time when you were just growing up. You were a child, and let's say maybe your teens. I mean, that's not being a child, but yeah, you were a teen. How was your mindset back then, and what was your, environment at that point in time?
It's a lovely question, and it's one I quite like talking about it, to be honest, because I'll start now and go back, right? In the coaching space I've been in for a long time, so many people get into the coaching industry and go into personal development because they've had a really tough journey, a tough upbringing. And so I go to all these seminars, and coaching courses and stuff over the past sort of, 7 or 8, 10 years, where people, when we talk about money mindset or, childhood, people had all these stories like they were always broke as kids, or they were always, abused, that sort of thing. For me, I grew up with a really successful dad, private schools, big house, lots of holidays, scholarships to some of the best schools, academic scholarships to some of the best schools in Nottingham, in England, which is where I first grew up, and then in Sydney, scholarship to Sydney University, all academic. My money memories, as a kid, are like having an enormous house, my dad putting on a professional fireworks display when I graduated from primary school, renting a plane to fly his mates over to Czechoslovakia for his 40th birthday. And okay. So I grew up very, very, very comfortable, right? And so not spoiled, but very comfortable. And looking back, we had a beautiful, beautiful life growing up. My mindset, always energetic, and I appreciate you saying I don't take myself too seriously, because I try not to. And I think I'm quite a, easygoing dude. But in high school, there was a lot of expectation on me and the people around me due to the environment we were in. Private schools, lots of money, you go to university, become a lawyer, become a doctor, the standard expectations of private schools. And I really struggled my whole childhood with being very academically gifted and not caring about my academic studies at all. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. My dad was an entrepreneur. My dad started businesses and sold businesses and real estate. And I think I got that bug, and I just could not care less about my academics. So I always did really well, but I was always told, you should be doing better. You should be working harder. You should be trying harder. You should be going to uni. So when I left, so during high school, I was a punk rocker. I was a punk band. I was a skateboarder.
Wow.
I had my nose pierced. I'd wear leopard print skinny jeans. I would shop at the girls' stores, wear fingernail polish. I would...
Interesting.
Yeah, 100%. My friends and I were all, on the weekends, we were all skateboarding and playing gigs and smoking lots of illicit substances and drinking a lot, and really just, I guess, some rebelling against the structured, high-pressure upbringing we were in. Because it's very, and looking back, I'm glad, I've got no regrets, but looking back, I definitely did not take up all the opportunities I was given. Hope my parents so now I really, really hope my parents are proud of what I've done, because they made sacrifices to send my sister and I to these schools, give us these opportunities. I didn't take them at all. I went to university for 6 weeks and quit. And so I think I was probably a very frustrating teenager, but I wasn't cool. I had a tight group of friends. We enjoyed ourselves. But yeah, I think overall I was a very frustrating kid to be around.
Well, I'm surprised to hear that. And actually, I'm happily surprised that, that we could have a different kind of a childhood that we could discuss here. Because, yes, in most of the cases, it has been really tough for a lot of people. And because of that, they have a motivation to come out of it and do the best for themselves. Looking at your life, even though I think you had a lot of comfort, as you mentioned, you had a different sort of pressure to yourself, which is to always be the best. And I think the best was never enough in your dictionary, or maybe the kind of people that you're surrounded, because they were so good in what they were doing. And I'm happy that we're discussing this, because people who are listening to us, they can understand that whichever situation or background or childhood that you come from, all of us are bound to face some insecurities, some sort of imposter syndrome, or some sort of pressure. It could be in any circumstance. So there is no a way that a person is brought up that, the life is all about all good and colorful. It is always from the very beginning understanding yourself, your situations and challenges, and growing with them. I think what is very beautiful in your story that you mentioned, Alex, is that you still appreciated what your parents did for you, even though, you're coming from a background where you had everything, but you did realize the importance of what you have. Even though you felt bad that, you were academically really good and your parents had that hope that you could do well, but that's something that you did not want to. But I think in hindsight, I feel that it's good that somewhere you listen to yourself, because when you do that, you understand yourself even better, that whether you did something right or wrong. But that's just my that's my perspective. But moving on from there, I see that you went into the profession of, you were a chef. You were cooking some really yummy food. How did that happen for you?
You're a really, really well-researched and very talented interviewer, Shani. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is a real pleasure, by the way. Just, I don't know if anyone tells you that. This is the best podcast I've done by far. And we're 9 minutes in. So thank you so much. Always enjoyed cooking. Very lucky that my mum was a good cook and got us involved in it during our childhood years. And so it was just something I like to do. When I went through school in Australia, the Australian high school, a lot of times what you can do is around year 10. So when you're about 15 years old, you're allowed to, if you want to, you can quit school and get a trade, become a plumber, electrician, or a chef, because you study being a chef at TAFE. My school didn't offer that, because you had to go to university, finish your exams, and that kind of thing. Okay. So I didn't even think about it, and I went through my exams and did really well despite not studying. I became really high up in the state and got like a medal and,
Wow.
highest marks and everything, which to the
You were
masses.
really intelligent.
Yeah. I'm really good at writing, terrible with numbers and science and that sort of thing, but the creative things, writing and history and English, I picked my subjects well, right? So maths, I scraped through in maths. Everything else brought me over the line, So, but that's not what this is about. What this is about is I finished school and everyone was saying which university you got to apply to, and you got to have like 5 universities ready to go: first choice, second choice, third choice. And I had none. I was like, I'm not going. I don't care. I don't want to go. And then it got to like February when all my friends were going to uni, and I was like, I've got nothing to do. I've just been drinking for since November, and so I was like, oh, I'll go to uni, and I hadn't applied, and there's a long waiting list at Sydney Uni. But I knew a guy who knew a guy, and I said, these are my marks from high school. Can I come to Sydney? And he's like, yeah, come on in. We'd love to have you. And I got some kind of discount. Like, it's really painful looking back at like how many people moved things to get me in and to help me out academically. And I just threw it in their faces. And I know that. But either way, I went to uni for about 6 weeks and thought it was absolute nonsense. I was like, I'm here. Not because uni's nonsense, but for me, it didn't fit.
Yeah.
I was just wasting my time and everyone else's time. So I had a friend who had left school and he was an apprentice chef in a very fancy restaurant. And I was like, he's getting paid to learn, doing something that I love to do. I'm just skipping class every day and smoking, at the uni bar. Like, what a waste of time. He's actually learning and getting paid for it. So I was like, I'm out of here. Had the conversation with my parents, which I think wasn't a massive conversation because it was probably quite obvious I wasn't into it. And I started applying for chef apprenticeships. My first chef apprenticeship was actually in the kitchens of a hospital. I lived not close to the city. All the best restaurants are in the city of Sydney. And I was like an hour out of city. So I got a job in the kitchens of this, what were they, Seventh-day Adventist hospital. So that's like a branch of Christianity. They're all vegetarian, and it was a private hospital, amazing facilities. And I did my first year apprenticeship there. They were really, really good to me. And in classic Alex fashion, I took what they'd given me and then left and threw it back at them and said, I'm bored in this hospital. I'm better than this. And I went and got a job in cooking at an Italian restaurant. And then, fell in love with it. And I did that for the next 11 years. In various iterations, fine dining, cafes. I owned my own cafe for a bit, had my own catering company. I did front of house, back of house, bartending, sommelier, every part of the restaurant industry. Absolutely love it.
Can I just say, I love your courage. When you are talking about, how you just took up some work and then you left it and you felt bad about it. But how I am looking at your story is that from the very beginning, you knew your strengths. As you mentioned that you took the subjects, even though you were academically really strong, but even in that aspect, you knew where your strengths lie. So you selected what you wanted to, work on. And that's another great learning in your life. Like if you are good into something, then you should pick that thing up and actually amplify that. And this is something that I think that has come up a lot often on the podcast, even with previous guest speakers, that amplify your strengths. The second thing that I really like is that you used your network, and it was what got you in, even though they had a bit of a trouble. But I think they found you sort of worth it, and that's why they got you in. But after, sorry, you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, when you said I'm sure I have high praise for myself now, I like myself a lot more now than I did back then.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, when we're young, we really don't know who we are, let alone like ourselves. But what I was trying to, get to is that and also like when you had that whole process of getting in there, you knew you wanted to leave it and you did take that decision, which is again not very easy. It's not easy to drop off something that the world thinks is the best path, because I think you knew your own path. So these are very amazing learnings that I think I have from listening to you right now. I can just understand. And for whoever is listening to us, even if you're in the same boat, if you feel something is not right for you, before quitting anything, there are a few important questions that I think one should really ask. And those would be definitely around what you really want. Would this be the best thing if you leave it? What is the next best option? And if that is really the best thing that you needed. So before taking any I think action, you really need to ask questions. And this is something that I really liked in your journey so far. I really like your courage. I can say that again.
Thank
But
you.
yeah,
On that, I want to expand on that because
yeah,
that's a really, really good point. So looking at what you just said, I've quit a lot of things in my life, but always for what I thought was a better option. So while that's definitely, a bit of a pattern in a lot of entrepreneurs' lives, which is like grass is always greener, that shiny object syndrome, I've only ever quit one thing because it was too hard and I didn't want to do it anymore. And that was it was a leaflet newspaper drop when I was about 13 years old, because I realized how much work was involved and I was like, I'm being so underpaid here. This is not worth it. And I quit and I made my dad tell the person I was quitting. And I even, lost my nerve at the last second and made him do it. That's the only thing I've quit because it was too hard. Everything else, I've definitely bounced around a lot. But what you said, ask some questions if it is the right thing. I've always had at least what I thought was a better option for me at the time. So I'm very, very good with taking risk as long as I think there's a benefit to the risk, I suppose.
absolutely. A calculative risk is the best risk that you can take.
Sure.
Unless you have a very strong gut feeling that this is the thing for you. And I think your heart is always right. So you should listen to it as well. Moving ahead, just in your 10 years of this journey of being an amazing chef.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't taste your food, but just moving ahead, what has been your top the favorite learning out of this situation? And what has been the worst situation that you had to encounter in these 10 years? So one of your best and one your worst.
In hospitality, yeah? In the hospital, yeah. So the best thing I've said multiple times is just the work ethic that you get in hospitality. Because while my friends were at university and had casual jobs where they maybe worked in a shop, at the mall for $20 an hour for 4 hours on a Saturday morning, I was in that restaurant 60 hours a week from the age of 17. You get there at, some jobs I was there 7 a.m. until 1 a.m., 5 days in a row, and you don't sit down for 15, 16, 17 hours a day. And you just work hard, you work fast, under pressure, in a small team. That was the best thing about it. And so I say even now, even though I hope to have similar circumstances for my daughters that my parents had for me, I am going to really push them to get their first teenage jobs in hospitality, because the life skills you get to work with people, to work hard, to work fast, to work when you're tired, to be uncomfortable, to even just burn your hand on something and then carry on working. I think that's fantastic. Really thick skin. The worst thing about it, which was really interesting, was that as I worked in better and better restaurants, the attitude in the kitchen got worse. And so at the lower end cafes, restaurants, and in Australia, they have a rating system out of 20. In the restaurants, around 14 out of 20. Everyone's a team. Everyone's best mates. You finish work and you might go for a beer together. Everyone helps each other out. As I moved into those 17, 18 out of 20 restaurants, some of the best in the country, it became almost like a competition against the people you're working with, and almost as if everyone's trying to prove who's the best. And for me, that didn't work. So I didn't actually last very long in the kitchen of the really high-end restaurants, because I got there and I was trying to, like you said, maybe not take myself so seriously. I'd crack a joke. I was used to kind of being mates with my colleagues. And yeah, I went from being popular to being the least liked person in the kitchen, because I didn't have the same maybe passion or the same drive or the same relentless ambition in that kitchen as everyone else. And I thought I did until I got there. And instead of lifting me up, they'd push me down. And so that was an interesting thing for me. That didn't happen in all the restaurants, all the good restaurants I worked in. I found some which were fantastic. But there's one particular restaurant, it was my dream to work there. When I went there, everyone thought they were better than everyone else. And I imagine it's a bit like that cutthroat high-end business that we see in movies and TV, where everyone's got it in for each other. Rather than being a team, it's like proving that they're better than everyone else. And so that was really interesting, quite disappointing for me up the high end of hospitality.
Lovely. Thank you for answering that question in so much detail and giving us examples, because that kind of clears out a lot of things. I like to talk about the worst situation that you were in, which was very interesting because I think you figured out what sort of environment you really like to work in. So I always say that it's all within you. It's how you look at yourself and how you build the thoughts. But I also believe that it's also very important whom you're surrounded with. And I think that was the case which you're mentioning, and a lot of us do face that. So going forward, for listeners in your career or in your own, if you have your own business, it is definitely important that what you think of the business, what you think about yourself, what you want. But there's also a little bit of external factor, which is the people that you're surrounded with, that how you grow as a team. And it is always a team work, unless it is very direct. You are the only person who's responsible for everything. So in any career that you are, it's always a teamwork. Even at home, a family, it's a teamwork. So I think having good people around is something which can really help you, really go from point A to point Z. Okay.
Teamwork makes the dream work. That's what we used to say. One team, one dream.
Awesome. So from there, like when you started feeling that this is not the place for you, and then you have your own digital advertising agency, which is doing splendidly well. You are helping so many coaches and consultants around the country over here today. But I want to know your first steps. Like, how did it begin, and what were you thinking at that point in time?
Yeah, I understand. It's a bit of a jump from being a chef to being a digital marketer, and very long story short, because this is the longest part of the story. But the biggest jump is that I let the hospitality lifestyle get on top of me, and what I mean by that is I obviously have an addictive personality, so I started working too much, drinking, eating, smoking too much. I ballooned out in weight. I stopped sleeping very well, became very unhealthy. And then my friends kind of called me out on that. And so I got myself healthy again and had a tremendous weight loss and fitness journey. And that led me to actually start making healthy cooking videos and healthy nutrition videos and stuff on social media whilst I was still in hospitality. Then through doing that, I actually found a business, like a business coach who helped me to start a coaching business in the nutrition and cooking and healthy eating weight loss space. And I did that for like 6 years. And through that, I learned how to do all the marketing, all the funnels, ads, make content, how to deliver a program, how to sell. Every skill you need in the coaching business, I learned that. And so I was actually before I was a marketer, I was just marketing my own coaching business. And I was actually working in hospitality up until May 2020.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I never quit because I didn't like it. I quit because it's not conducive with having a family of 4. It doesn't really work. But my wife my girlfriend, then fiance, then wife, was so patient the whole way through. We were used to those hours. When the girls came along, I decided no more. But I was simultaneously cooking and working in restaurants and cafes and health coaching all at once for about 6 years. Became really good at the marketing side of it, the social media side, the creative side. When I found out we were not having 1 but 2 babies, I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I can keep going with what I'm doing. I don't think I can keep doing the working with gyms and cooking demos and late night webinars and sales calls. I need to work on my laptop 100%. And by chance, I was already doing marketing just for a friend of mine who had great sales skills, lots of money, no time, and said, you want to do my ads for me? So I was like, yeah, I can do that. When the babies came along, I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do marketing, just for a couple months, while the babies are little and while we're not sleeping, while we're staying at home. This was also during a lockdown. So the kind of fitness space was shut down as well. So I started this mini marketing company making websites and chatbots and, $200 jobs, that sort of thing, just to get by, just for a means to an end, really. Just so I could work on my laptop at 3 a.m. when I had a baby on either side of me, sleeping on the couch, and my wife was in bed. What happened then at Shiny was that it just worked. And I kept getting clients. I kept getting sales. I kept getting referrals, and it was so much easier than my coaching business had ever been. And so when I started, I was marketing for anyone and everyone who would have me. But I realized that 90% of my network was in the coaching space. Most of them came through the same programs and seminars and coaches that I did. But most of them, looking at them, had terrible marketing. So I just started saying, okay, I'll do yours. And by accident, I was marketing all for coaches. So when I rebranded about 18 months ago, I said, To the Moon Digital for coaches and consultants. And the rest is really history. So my first step, coming back to your original question and the name of the podcast, was actually starting a business just to get by for the initial 3-month period where I knew I would not be able to sleep or leave the house.
Yeah, that's actually so exciting, your story over there, because it really reinforces and underpins the fact that you always start small and you always have to take a step one by one. Definitely, you can have a long term plan, but what really works for you at the beginning is just taking a small step, because everything is so daunting at the beginning. And as you mentioned, that things started to, work in a flow for you, but it took its own time. You did not just, start a business overnight, and you did not really think about the branding, the positioning, your USP overnight. It happened. First, you made yourself like you wanted to be an, I don't know if you wanted to, but you actually worked on a specific a part of the marketing. It was more about digital marketing, and then you gained experience in all the different areas of digital marketing. You became an expert, and that's when you started going forward and then thinking beyond the skills, that because once you have a very good hold on the skills, the second thing is like how you expand it, how do you brand yourself. And I think things fell very well in your space, but definitely you work so hard for it. So I think, Alex, this has been such an amazing conversation, from you being a richy rich child to someone who now owns his own richy rich business. And yeah,
Business just yet, but I will say, out of
I hope so for you. Yeah.
Elaborating on what you just said, I know you're wrapping it up, so I won't go for too long. But you said this hasn't happened overnight. This last 18 months, 2 years, has been the first time since I've been like 20, 23, 22. I think I started my first business at 22. This is the first time I've been able to live solely on my business income, and now I'm able to support a family of 4 and live very comfortably off it. But it took about 8 or 9 years to get to this point. So people give up very quickly, and I was very lucky to not give up on it, because I physically couldn't just follow. I can't listen and do what I'm told, and so I physically just kept going. I was very blessed that I had a good family around me and everything. But yeah, no, it didn't happen overnight, that's for sure.
So I think my takeaway from today's episode would be to be courageous, and courage comes from listening to yourself, be it whoever is, turning you down from what you want to do. Second, understand your strengths and amplify it. And third, it always takes a lot of time. You need to be patient if it is important for you. And I think you will be if it is important for you. So before we say bye to Alex today, Alex, are you able to leave our listeners with a quote that you really like, or a saying? And also, if you would like to recommend a book for our listeners today.
Amazing. I heard a quote today just in a comment on someone else's Instagram post, and I'll try and remember it, because I remember seeing it and thinking, Whoa, that's massive. And it was, most people fail because they give up what they really want for what they want now, which I thought was awesome. Because if I'd done that, what I wanted now, many, many times, was basically a living, which I didn't have for many, many years, which is why I had to work in cafes and wash dishes and make coffee and all sorts of stuff while starting my business. What I really wanted was to have the freedom to spend time with my family like my dad did once he sold his business and retired at the age 40, you know? So I think that's huge for me is people give up too soon because they really they go for short-term pleasure, you know, short-term benefit, you know, and life's very difficult sometimes and pain will get you. So I think that's great. As it comes to books, I'm a terrible coach because I do not read books. I listen to books, but I cannot get myself to sit down and read a book. I've tried so many times, but I don't think I've read a book
I
cover to
completely
cover.
identify with you.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
You know, in the coaching space, right, we're meant to be so good at reading books and like freaking journaling and all this stuff where you're meditating and, you know, ice baths and everything that you do to be a perfect coach. You'll never be successful unless you wake up at 4:30 and do 10,000 steps and meditate and get some crystals out and read 30 pages of a book and journal and all, you know, so many things we're meant to be good at. I'm a terrible coach because I don't read books. However, I listen to books. And one that worked really well for me, which was a business book, which helped me get through hard times in business, was actually called Shoe Dog. And it's by Phil Knight, who's the guy who formed Nike. And so Nike, everyone knows Nike. But the funny thing about him was that he was still an accountant working for someone else, like 6 years into Nike when they were doing millions of dollars of sales per year, because he kept reinvesting everything into scaling the company and making it bigger and bigger. And he was not in it to get rich. He was in it to just impact the world. And the stuff that man has been through in business make you just realize that your problems are minuscule compared to what they could be. Like, he got a bill one day for like $140 million or something, you know, in tax that he'd forgotten to pay. And he's still here, you know? So Shoe Dog by Phil Knight is my my go-to book when I'm feeling a little bit down in my business.
Lovely. So that was some interesting book recommendation and an amazing quote by Alex today. And we end on such a high note. I'm so happy that Alex could join us today and he could share his story, because every story is worth listening to and learning from.